sharing. I'm really excited this morning to have Christine Couldrey here from the R&D group, who is a senior scientist in the R&D group, which in itself is a feat. So really pleased to have her here to tell us about her Deca Ironman that she completed back in November in New Orleans, to which she is now the world record holder. Smashed a record that was set 26 years ago and completed this Deca Ironman in the fastest time that a woman ever has. So really excited to hear what you've got to say and all about your journey.
Thank you, Renee. Yeah, so a few days ago I was doing some sort of back of the envelope calculations, and I worked out that on average I get called crazy about once every day. And so today I'm going to give you a bit of an insight into the mindset of a crazy person by taking you through a little bit of what it takes to complete a Deca Ironman. What it takes, that is, in addition to the world's best support crew, and most of you will know Anna. Anna and Mitch went above and beyond looking after me day and night for 2 weeks in a state park in Louisiana in the US. So some of you might be wondering what a Deca Ironman is and why I might need a support crew. It's a triathlon, a very long triathlon. It starts with 38 kilometres of swimming in a pool. I then got on my bike and rode 1,800 kilometres, and I finished that up with 4 marathons, so 442 kilometres. And like most triathlons, the race starts when you start the swim, and it finishes, the clock stops when you finish that last kilometre of the run. It doesn't matter what you want to do in that time. You can stop, you can sleep, sometimes the race stops because the weather's so bad, but the clock keeps ticking that whole time. And while these ultra-distance triathlons are always in this little loop format, you'll see that we spend a lot of time going up and down a bike trail, a lot of time going up and down a road. To give you a little bit of context of how far this all is, Hugh Trin made up this picture for us that it would be the equivalent of swimming across Cook Strait, doing a really big bike tour around the South Island, and then running from Palmerston North here to Newstead via Rotorua. When I look at this map even now, I think, how is it possible for one person to do that continuously? And even now, having done it, I still think that, because it's inconceivable really that's possible. So how does your brain get you from sitting here at the start line that we had to wait a little while here at the start line to race continuously for more than 10 days to end up over here, which is perhaps one of the best places I have ever been in the whole wide world. And as I was sitting here at the start line, or waiting here at the start line, my brain was saying exactly that. It's like, well, I think in theory that I can do this, but I just don't know how I can keep my brain in order and how my brain can get me through all of those days of racing continuously. I decided it was best not to think too much about it at that point in time. But actually it begins way before the start line. Doing a Deca Ironman starts many months or even years, and doing a Deca Ironman is a goal that I've had for probably close to 12 or 13 years before I actually did it. And so when I came across this particular diagram here, it actually, all of these words, I thought it was very true. It is very much like most people see me biking to work and things, but mostly what people see is this. But what most of you, and there are some people that I've trained with in this room that do know this part, but most people don't see all of what goes on behind the scenes. And so many of these words on this particular slide, when I saw this picture, really evoked a lot of really strong emotions in me when I thought about my journey through the Deca Ironman. And so as in the last sort of 2.5 months since the race, as I've been reflecting on the race, because it's a big thing, so I spent a lot of time reflecting on it, all the things that I think about how it was can really be put into sort of 5 broad categories as to what needs you and what drives you and what you need to actually finish a Deca Ironman. So today I'm going to share with you my 5 words to carry you through a Deca Ironman. I think courage, preparation, commitment, control, and patience. So we'll start with courage. The courage to be sitting here with the starters, and this was the entire field of the Decker Ironman. The courage that it took to be sitting in that group of people was huge, because you don't know what it's going to be like to do a Decker Ironman, and that fear of the unknown at times for me was really quite overwhelming. It was very easy to fill in the bit of paper and send off a cheque for the race entry fee. It was very easy to buy plane tickets to the US. But then actually, as it became real and I started thinking about it, not knowing what it was like to race for 10 days was actually, like, the fear involved in that was huge. And there were times that maybe if I hadn't bought my plane ticket and I hadn't already spent many thousands of dollars of getting there, there were times where, well, if I hadn't spent all that money, maybe it's better if I just don't do it, because it scares me so much. But most of you that know me know that I'm not very good at quitting anything, and so I'm really happy that I overcame that fear and that I did have the courage to sit with that group of people. But during the race, you also need courage. You need courage to carry on when other people won't. The weather in New Orleans in November is supposed to be quite pleasant. It's supposed to be nice and warm and not rain too much. When we were there, that was not the case. It rained for days on end, and you can see how cold it was for quite a lot of the time. And sometimes we had the cold and rain together at the same time. And it got so cold and wet that both athletes and support crews started wearing plastic bags. When people were getting that desperate. And people stopped. People quit because of the weather. People stopped for hours at a time because it was cold and wet. And I had the courage not to do that. And so I came off the bike second out of all the men and women, just because I kept going when others didn't. You also need the courage to accept help. And many people that undertake ultra-distance triathlons, type A personalities, we're used to doing everything for ourselves. It's an important part that we're completely independent. And it's actually quite hard sometimes to accept that you need help. This is me getting out of the pool after 13 hours and 42 minutes of swimming. And I tell you, I couldn't get out of the pool on my own because I hadn't stood up for a long time. And so Anna and Mitch are helping me out of the pool. It was the first time they really helped me in something in the race, but it definitely wasn't the last. And I'm very thankful to Anna, who ended up having to do things like dress me every day because I couldn't do it. But to actually accept that help is, you have to take a little bit of a step back, and that actually is quite hard. So we move on to preparation. To swim, bike and run for crazy long periods of time, your body needs to be prepared for it. You can't just go do a couple of 5k runs and have muscles that will carry on for 10 or 11 or 12 days. And so it takes a lot of training. There's a lot of preparation, getting your muscles, tendons, ligaments, bones all strong enough and capable of carrying on for a really long time. And I'd been training pretty hard for Godzone, which was in March last year, so we'd done a lot of training for that. After we were done with Godzone, which itself had some very good training moments for a Decker Ironman, I actually was training 30 to 35 hours a week every week. And when I talk to a lot of people about doing these ultra distance things, people will often say to me, it's mostly mental. And, couldn't disagree with that. There's a really big mental component, but I actually think that if you're going to do something like this, to actually be able to get your brain trained to do something this long, you actually have to have done the actual physical training, because that physical training allows you to understand how it feels when you're really tired and you don't want to carry on and stuff hurts, and your brain begins to accept that as normal and understand how that is, and that's actually okay. So it is largely mental, but I don't think you get the mental aspects without the physical training. But it's not just your brain and your body that you need to train and prepare for this. You also need to know how you're going to do it. And when you're training 30 or 35 hours a week, you actually have a lot of time to think. And I think about all sorts of things, work, random, bizarre stuff. But I also spend a lot of hours thinking about what's the best way to do this race? What's the most efficient way to do this particular portion? Because in an ultra distance race, you have a finite amount of energy. And I'm pretty lazy, so I want to be spending all that energy going towards the finish line. I don't want to be wasting any energy on anything that's not getting me to the finish line. And so I just don't want to be doing unnecessary things. I want to be doing everything in the laziest, most efficient way possible to get to the finish line the fastest. So before we got to the race, I actually had plans, I think A through E, of how it was going to go. Best case scenarios, there's a lot of opportunity for things to go horribly wrong, so there were contingency plans. But I thought about what I was going to eat, how much I needed to eat, when I was going to eat, how much I would sleep, when I would sleep, all of those sorts of things. And you can sort of see here in the swimming pool, we all had done some thinking about what we were going to be at least eating and our breaking the race up strategy. So we went into this with quite detailed plans on how it was going to be. But you have support crew. They're usually athletic type people, but it's unlikely that they've done a Deca Ironman. So you also need to prepare your support crew, and Anna and Mitch both got 20-page documents on how it was going to be, the plans of how we were going to do it, but then also all the contingencies. If the weather's like this, if I'm feeling like this, if I'm too tired, this is what to look for. If you see this in me, then you should do this because it will likely make it better. As many contingencies as I could think of to help them help me with my journey. You also do need to prepare for the unexpected because there are things that you will never think of before the race. I bet you Anna and Mitch never thought that they would be supporting in a support crew tent that was shin deep in water at times, or that on the bike trail there'd be things that gave us lots of punctures, that there would be 60 punctures in the bike leg of this race. I bet you also Anna never thought that she would have to come up with a mechanism when somebody stole the meatballs that had been left for me without sauce for the swim. Somebody took them and Anna was like, oh my god, there are no meatballs, but she never thought she'd have to go and actually go find some meatballs in sauce, scrape the sauce off, wash the meatballs, dry them, so that I would have meatballs to eat during the swim. But she did. Commitment. To finish a Deca Ironman, you need to be 100% committed to finishing. Because when it gets tough, and it will get tough beyond your wildest dreams, you need to know what your goal is, and you need to be 100% committed to getting there and doing whatever it takes. It's not just during the race. You also need that commitment before the race. When my alarm clock goes every morning at 5:15, it's rare that I want to jump out of bed and ride to work. Really, what I'd rather do is be like, oh, it'd be nice to sleep for another hour, get in the car, drive to work. But actually, if I weren't committed to what I do, I would probably do that. But my commitment to this goal meant that I said, well, no, it's 5:15, you've got to get up, you've got to ride to work. You have to have the commitment to go out training, and for me this was every Saturday and Sunday for many hours at a time, mostly on my own. I'm very thankful to the people that came training with me to break up some of that monotony. But, you know, I was out there every Saturday, every Sunday, for hours on end on my own, fitting in training around work during the week. But for me, probably the hardest thing in training to be on the commitment side was the 6-hour training swims. They nearly broke me. To have to go swim on your own in a swimming pool for 6 hours at a time is incredibly mentally difficult, and I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. So it's about knowing what your goal, being committed, and really, really going out there. It's also during the race, the commitment to keep going, even when you look this bad. And at that point in time, I actually probably felt as bad as I look in that picture. On that particular day, it had been raining for probably the last 3 days, and I think on that day, the temperature didn't get above 8 degrees Celsius, so it was miserable, and this is probably at 9 o'clock at night where I'm having some pizza that's cold and probably from 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you have to have the commitment to keep going, even when your support crew starts making fun at you because you're so tired. I was that tired. They were on point with how tired I was. In the last few days of the race, I was so tired that if I sat down, no matter what was going on around me, I would fall asleep. And this picture here is me actually having my feet worked on later in the race, and I'm asleep, even though what they're doing to my feet is really quite painful. This picture on the right on the left over here, Portaloo at the end of the run turnaround. So it turns out this is my favourite Portaloo in the whole world ever. When it was so cold and wet and raining, it was like this haven of warmth and no wind. I might have used it more often than I really needed to. But one time I went in to actually properly use it, and I fell asleep while I was using it. And I literally woke up when I fell forward and my head hit the door. That's how tired it was. So control. You need to be in control of your brain absolutely at every moment during the race. And I picked this picture up here because to me, when I look at this picture and I think about that part of the race and how I look in that, to me it really illustrates how in control I was the whole time. And one of the things that I'm proudest about in the race that I did was just how much control I had over my brain the entire time, completely unwavering. I was completely focused in what I was doing, and you really need that, because as soon as your brain gets out of control, it spirals into a big black hole very, very easily. This starts actually quite early in the race. This picture was taken about 2 hours into the swim, and around this time I remember swimming along thinking, oh, I'm having a great time. I've got some buddies in the pool with me. We're, eating and drinking, and this is great. I've been swimming for 2 hours and I feel great. And I started thinking about it as I was swimming the next lap, and I was like, oh, actually, the swim time might take me 14 or 15 hours, so that means that I've actually got to, what I've already done, I need to swim another 6 times, and then I need to get out of the pool, and then I've got to go ride my bike for 4.5 days, and then I've got to run for at least 5 days, and then I started freaking out a little bit. Unfortunately, this only went on for a minute or so, and I realised then that that's not going to be good. I'm just going to now swim the next 1,200 metres until I have another snack. And so you have to be completely focused and in the moment of what you're doing now, and not thinking way up. Just this is what I'm doing now, and this is all good, and this is how I'm going to keep myself happy now. About a day and a bit later, at the end of my first full day on the bike, I was thinking, yeah, I nailed the first day on the bike. Rode hard, did good, and I thought, oh, you've got another 3 and a bit days to ride. I wonder if I rode too hard today. And so not only do you have to be focused on the here and now, you also have to be completely focused on the bigger picture, so that you don't go too hard now that you blow up and don't get finished. And I found that quite an interesting sort of a scenario that I haven't really found myself in so often, where I have to be so focused on the detail of now and so focused on the bigger picture, both at the same time. You also need to be completely in control of your emotions, because stuff happens in these races. At every race there is always drama. There are a lot of people from all different places, nobody's slick really, different personalities, different cultures, and there is always a lot of drama. And I'd said to Anna and Mitch before we started, we are going to deal with that by staying completely out of the drama. We won't be sucked into any drama that's happening, and we succeeded completely in that. I fortunately had a friend who was also racing who had different goals than I had, and he was able to stay very detached and external to the drama, and Mark would catch me up twice a day. We would do some laps together, and he would tell me what the latest drama was, and we would have a good laugh about it, which was good. But unexpected stuff happens, and you have to very much stay in control of your emotions during those as well. About, I think, 2 days into the bike, I lost complete control over these 2 fingers and really couldn't do anything with my hand more than pulling the brake on my bike. And at first when that started, I became a little bit upset about it. One lap I was thinking, oh my God, I've got so far to go, well, let's work out. And that started to upset me quite a lot. I was like, well, being upset about it's not going to actually be any use to me or anybody. Isn't it funny how stupid my hand now looks, and the fact that I can't actually, my brain can't work out that there's now a hole between here. If I scoop up some M&Ms, they all fall through every time, and the brain can't relearn that I can't put those fingers together. So instead of being upset about it, we laughed a lot about it, and that became very easy when Anna had to try and put some gloves on my hand or dress me, because actually those things turn out to be quite hard. Getting your fingers into gloves is quite hard if you can't move them at all. Another unexpected thing for me that happened is usually my feet are reasonably good. I'll get some blisters, but they're not usually particularly detrimental to my performance. But on this race, starting in the first half of a marathon that I ran, my feet started falling apart. So I did not expect in this race to be spending an hour and a half or more a day with the doctor fixing up my feet. The pain that I experienced in my feet over the days that we did the race is greater than any pain I've experienced ever before and ever want to again. Again, it was quite hard to deal with, but I told myself, well, actually, it's not really that bad. It doesn't really hurt that much. If I want to reach my goal, I have to keep running at this speed, so that's just what I'm going to do. I didn't ever look at my feet, and it was at that point having to remove my socks and put my socks on for me when I had a little sleep at night. And I just told myself it wasn't really that bad, but you saw the picture earlier of me after the race, and when I finished it actually did turn out that bad. And after the race, when I realised how bad it actually was, it blew me away with how your mind can actually control what your body has experienced. Because it hurt, but it didn't hurt to the extent that the damage was actually there. So that actually blew me away quite a lot. You do also have to have a support crew that can be completely in control of their emotions too. Before Anna left New Zealand to come and help me, she did display some lack of desire to be anywhere near where the alligators were, and that was before she saw our 5-star over-water accommodation. That is actually where we slept, when we slept. And late in the race, at 2 o'clock in the morning one morning, it is getting me ready to have my 3-hour sleep in the tent, and Mitch is outside, Anna, you gotta come quickly, Anna, you gotta see this. Anna gets up, walks out, and I hear her say, oh yeah, as she sees the 2.5 metre alligator swimming under the tent. She walks back into the tent and carries on helping me. Maybe inside she was doing this, and then she's like, oh yeah, and she carries on the job. And that's exactly what you need, because losing the plot at that point in time, saying that she wasn't going to sleep in the tent, was not really going to work out very well for anybody. The last word is patience, and patience and control, quite a big overlap between these two, but I think patience deserves its own group, because really, if you're not patient, it's terrible. When I looked up the dictionary meaning, I was like, well, actually, they've got that pretty much right, except for I would say that it's a capacity to accept or tolerate delay and problems, and not suffering. Because if you can actually accept or tolerate it, then you don't suffer. For a lot of that run, if you'd asked me how much pain I was in, I would say it's a 9 out of 10. But there wasn't so much in the way of suffering that went with it. It hurt a lot, but there wasn't suffering. And a lot of that is patience. It's never thinking, I wish I was a marathon further on, or I'm not going faster. It'll be better when I get there, or I wish I was further. Thinking like that, I've done races where that has happened, say on the last day, and it's quite terrible. If you can stay in the moment, and be happy with where you are, it's like, well, I'm now running here. I'm running as fast as I can, within that allowing me to actually finish. That's all good. I'm happy with that. And if you can be patient like that, then there really isn't the suffering that comes with when you can't accept with how it is where you are right now. So patience is really incredibly important. And patience is much easier when you are surrounded by people that you get on well with, and if you have fun. If you're having fun, the patience comes much more easily than if you're not making fun of every stupid little thing. And we did make fun of every stupid little thing, many things that I would share with you, but they're likely not funny if you haven't been sleep deprived for the last 10 days. And part of that fun is definitely having a lot of friends around. There were a lot of people that I knew before I went to the race, deepened friendships, made new friendships. And that really did help with that patience. So I think that, if you have the right mindset, that it's not only possible to complete a Decker Ironman, but it's also possible to meet your goals and break the world record.
Wow, what an absolute achievement. I think there's lots of questions for Chris. Astounded by it. I've just heard.
Would you do it again?
Not yet. I think we might have on record on paper Anna writing down when I officially said that I was never doing it again halfway through the run.
Christine, why? Why did you do that?
That's a whole nother knowledge sharing. A lot of reasons. Some of it's control. I might be a little bit of a control freak. But it makes me the best person that I can be when I do a race like that. That brings out the best in me, and it fills me with a lot of confidence that I can then take to the rest of my life.
Rosemary.
Yeah, is that the transition
a PhD. There's a lot of overlap there. And I, especially since I've done this, I try really hard to take all of the learnings from what I do in that long distance stuff and then try and apply them to work situations. And if I could do them as well here as I do out there, that would be awesome. But yeah, it's a real big overlap between the two, and I think the same sort of skill sets of that being in control of your brain and being accepting are as valid at work as they are ultra distance racing.
Do you have another goal in mind?
Not yet. There are a few vague ones, but I just want to. I'm still basking in the glow of this one.
Run it back.
Do you do any meditation or mindfulness or mindfulness or this?
I don't actively do that, but when I talk to people that do things like that, what I've actually realised is that I get that from all the long training that I do, like even the biking to work, to and from work. I think what happens in that is actually a lot of what people are trying to achieve when they are doing this of the mindfulness work. Yeah.
Is there a more extreme race than this one?
There is. It's called a double-decker Ironman. Anna's waiting for call.
Oh, that was it.
Oh, that was your question.
Out of the people that started, how many finished? So how many started the race?
So 16 started and I think 10 finished. Yeah.
How did you manage your training hours with your work hours and your sleep hours? What time do you go to bed?
So I try to be in bed at 9:30 at night. It often doesn't happen. So the riding to work obviously gets me quite a lot of training hours. Do yoga at lunchtime, and you'll usually see me running or something at lunchtime. I spend much of my weekend training. Then after work, so structured for this, on a Tuesday and Thursday, I had a gym session over at the Uni Rec Centre, and I would ride into work on a Tuesday and Thursday, yoga at lunchtime on Tuesday, and then I'd go to the gym after work for an hour, and then my partner Nickel, he had karate on a Tuesday and Thursday night, so he would drive to Day Street, then I would ride over to Day Street and get the ute, and usually he would have heated up some soup for me, and that would be in a thermos. I'd eat that, and then I'd drive back to the gym, and then I'd go run on the treadmill for an hour or so until he was done with karate, and I'd pick him up and we would get home at 10 o'clock at night. So that's how crazy some of it was, like every week.
And still training?
I'm trying to start again. It's actually quite hard starting again.
This is the first time that we've seen Chris in
Proper
shoes
shoes.
since November.
This is the first time I've worn proper shoes since November. Yeah, it took 4 weeks before I could bring myself to put a pair of sneakers back on.
Absolutely outstanding achievement and the courage that you've shown. You should be so proud of what you've achieved, and Anna also for the support that you've shown to Chris. So well done, guys.